guys, it's the Chappiness guy. Welcome to today's episode of Vestibular TALKS. Today's special guest is Amy. Amy is a physical trainer and online coach. She's helping women around the world sculpt their bodies and find their confidence. She shares her workouts on Instagram for people to access them easier. Amy is also here with us today to share her story living with vestibular migraines and the things that she does in order to help herself live a normal life. So remember to like, share, and subscribe. Find your happiness, guys. Nice. All right, Amy, we're live.
Oh, cool. Didn't even know you
Welcome.
record these.
Welcome to this episode of Vestibular Talks. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Amy, you have changed lives whether you know it or not. Um, when I started my vestibular journey, I was desperate trying to find anything, anywhere, like any kind of information. And your video was one of the first videos that I found online. So it was a video that provided me with some hope, and a video that allowed me to relate to someone living something similar to. I mean, I feel bad that you were living the same conditions that I was living, but at least I wasn't alone. So would you mind telling us a little bit about you, about yourself, your story, and how everything began?
Sure. So I guess maybe for me, I probably was not more clued up, but like I had symptoms when I was a kid. So I started getting weird symptoms around puberty. So I'd say around 15. So I was in secondary school. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I even had symptoms way earlier than that, but they were just very like brief. And I probably just thought everyone gets these weird, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
At 15, I was like, really like, I would get dizzy, I would get spaced out. But it was very on and off. I wouldn't say it was like a consistent thing. I think my parents took me to a lot of doctors. They thought I had epilepsy because they related it to being like spaced out as being, anyways, they didn't find anything. And, you know, within 6 months, I was back to normal, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 19, it started happening again. And this time I did actually get diagnosed. What's interesting is I didn't know I got diagnosed until I looked back at my doctor's papers, but they actually diagnosed me with vestibular migraines back then. So they actually known about it. You know, it's, although people think it's a new diagnosis, I mean, we're talking like 12 years ago. So this obviously was something that was known within the ENT world. But again, it wasn't that severe. I took 6 months off work. And again, because the episodes were like episodes and not constant, they were scary, but they didn't ruin my life. Like I could kind of, within reason, get on with it. And that was it. Then I didn't really have much from the age of 19 all the way up until like 29. I might have had a few, you know, headaches and off days, and it's only when I look back that it makes sense now. Yeah. So I think, you know, for some people that I meet, they just randomly had this outburst of it, but I'm like, hey, like look back, because there would have been something that maybe might have indicated that you were, because you're born with it, like you are born with this brain, like whether you want to admit it or not, like it's always there. So when I was 29, I was on my way to a wedding. One of my clients was getting married, and I started feeling a bit off balance. Yeah. But because I'd obviously had minor episodes, I'm like, okay, like nothing to worry about. Like I was probably a bit more calm, like it's gonna go away, like this is the same. But very, very dramatically within 2 weeks, it just snowballed to the point where I'd never had these kind of symptoms. It was very, very extreme. I couldn't look at light, I couldn't stand. And these were actually symptoms that I think I did have as a kid, but on a very minor level. Yeah. So this time it was like debilitating and scary. So I think I spent, what was that, October? I would say all the way from October till December, I pretty much was in bed. Like it was horrendous. Like every week new symptoms were popping up. And I did actually have a lot of, not headaches, but my head felt like it was full of pressure. Which I now know is a migraine, even though it's not a typical migraine like you and me might have thought before. But I couldn't bend over without feeling like my head was going to explode. And that was very intense. My family all get migraines, so I am very much easy to diagnose. I think if you come from a family where you're the first one, or there's no one else in your family that has migraines, you are harder to diagnose. I think I was diagnosed early because my mom had migraines. My auntie has migraines. Every one of my siblings has migraines. So they were like, oh, this is easy. Like, we know what's wrong with her. But what I would say is the symptoms were so severe when I was 29. I was like, there's no way. There was no way in my head this isn't something that's going to kill me. This is like, I think logically I thought it was the same thing, but I couldn't understand why it was so extreme. I like why it was like ruining my life. And no one obviously takes it seriously because you can't see it. And it progressed. So by January, I started taking drugs, and the drugs actually, I don't think they made it worse. I think looking back, my brain was so sensitive that anything I was giving it was just reacting. I think that is quite common now that I've obviously learned a lot about it. But yeah, I then started feeling very spaced out. And I think that for me was like, oh my God, I'm always spaced out. Like, it just kind of, one day I woke up and it wouldn't go away. And that was probably the point for me where I was like, I can't, like, this is like, I've never, like, I would look in the mirror and I didn't feel like my face was my face. Like, that is like the scariest thing. But when I told my brothers that I was experiencing this, they were like, oh, well, you said this when you were a kid. So, you know, to me, I don't remember any of this. And I did actually tell my neurologist, and he was like, you don't remember stuff when you're a kid. You're very resilient and you don't worry about it. So if you feel a bit weird as a kid, he's like, you just get on with it. You wouldn't even double think. So I think there's an element of, was it as bad, or was I just tolerating it more? Like, I don't know. But my brothers, they're a lot older than me, and they always say when I was a kid, I would always feel like I said to them that, oh, I don't feel like I'm here. I feel like I'm here, but like I'm not here. So yes. What is quite reassuring is, to me, is that, all right, I've had this as I was a kid and it went away. So you can't keep fixing yourself that many times and then all of a sudden you're not going to get fixed. But what I would say, especially for women, I do think women take a lot longer to recover because of the hormones. We are constantly getting triggered by them. So a lot of the guys that I speak to, yeah, it's just as bad that they're not having them. If they're not, you know, if women are triggered by their cycles every month, they're just getting repetitively screwed. So the brain isn't kind of allowing itself to just relax. So I do think there is definitely, whether that's researched or not, I personally think it's why it takes women a lot longer. And it's probably why perimenopausal women that I've spoken to are in a really bad state, because their hormones are so heightened. So it's massively derived by hormones, which is apparently why migraine is higher in women than men.
Yeah. So
you guys are lucky.
That's a very good explanation.
Doctor in the last like 3 years, I feel like I could diagnose people.
Yeah, no, but it's good because so something that you mentioned is, you said we're born with this brain. I tend to agree with you that we were born with this condition based on family history of migraines and things like that. But a lot of other people believe that this is triggered by a viral infection, like the Epstein-Barr virus, because they follow the medical medium and they believe, they say, no, a virus triggers it. Do you think that it could be the case that we're born with it, but the virus triggers it more, or we're born with it, but at certain stages of our lives, we get it more than others?
It's difficult because I have had Epstein-Barr virus. Like, I'm one of the only people that had that when I was 23, and I actually got diagnosed with it because randomly when I went to my doctor, she was a locum doctor and she blood tested me, and so I knew I had it. Most people have it and don't know they've had it.
Yeah.
And it didn't flare up, you know, my vestibular symptoms at that point. So for me, it's like, well, I'm not saying it can't trigger it, but at that point it didn't flare them up. And I did ask my neurologist this, and what he said was that this time round, when I was 29, it was a virus that kind of was like the tipping point for me. Like, I was very ill before I got this. Like, I had a flu or whatever you want to call it. But I focused on this for a long time, and he was like, you know, in the theory of it's a jug, so the virus could be the thing that takes your jug overboard. And maybe that's true. The truth is, no one will ever know. So my opinion of it is, you know what? It's here. So the best thing is, I don't think it's good to focus on how or why, because I learned that actually will drive you insane. I think the best thing to do is be like, you know what, accept it. And the quicker you can accept it, the quicker you can start healing. Because if you drive yourself mad of how did it happen? Like, I thought the flu jab gave me this at one point. I was like, it was the flu jab. It was this. If I did this, this, and this. And it's like, but I've had the flu jab before and never been triggered. So it's like, I've had Epstein-Barr virus. And when all this happened, I got, you know, I spent £1,000 on blood tests, and the Epstein-Barr virus wasn't active in my body. So, you know, I agree with a lot of what the medical medium stuff does. I mean, I've tried the celery juice, and every time I try it, it gives me these terrible symptoms of like all my vestibular symptoms, which apparently is a good thing because it means that it's actually doing something. I just can't get past the 3 weeks of symptoms to even like, so obviously there's some, if it affects it in that way, I am not saying that it's not linked. But for me, it's just like, how far can you go down the rabbit hole with it? It's like, you need to do whatever you need to do to heal yourself. But I do think whether it's triggered from a virus or, you know, it's there. And it's like, it doesn't matter how it got there because it's there. So focusing on that, I don't think that's the cure. I think you have to try different things and see what works for you. Because if it's caused by the virus and someone does the medical medium approach and it doesn't work, then what?
Yeah, that's true.
If that's your approach, you're going to be very hopeless because you're going to be like, well, now what do I do? And it's like, look, maybe it was caused by that, but maybe that's not your answer. I think there's a lot more that goes into it than people think. And I do think, like, there was a guy that I spoke to very early on. There were some really nice people when I was ill who I always tried to help because they were so nice to me. I must have been the crazy, anxious person messaging them every day. And they just had all the patience in the world for me. So I always try to give that back because I think that's how life works. And you should always try and give what you received. But he was a acupuncturist. So someone that knew a lot about the body. And he was like, you know, a lot of it is your central nervous system. Like, look at the couple of years you've had before it. Like, what were you doing before? Like, how stressed out were you? Like, how were you living your life? Like, I do believe that he didn't think the answer was drugs. He was like, it's all about calming down your system in whatever way you want. Do you know what I mean? Drugs to me are not the answer, but I do think for some people, even for myself, they would have been quite good at the start because I was so anxious and so depressed that they would have helped me. Not fix the problem because drugs to me are just like, you know, they just numb the symptoms. They're not the cause. They're not going to, you know what I mean? That's very much my opinion of drugs. But, you know, a lot of people that I meet, they're so anxious that I'm like, and they can't sleep. And I'm like, listen, maybe like the drugs will help you for a certain point of it. Like that's, you know, the first doctor that I had when I was a kid never put me on drugs. He was very anti-drugs, which is why I never went back to go see him. But maybe the reason he never put me on drugs was because he knew eventually it would sort itself out. And I was quite young. Whereas some doctors are very much like, take this, take that.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I just think when you're that ill with it, like, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this, like, you are so depressed. Like, and depression is the biggest trigger for it because it's just a cycle. So you know, when I speak to people now, I'm like, if I could go back and tell myself something, I would have taken. I can honestly say, I wish they would have put me on them like sooner because it would have mentally helped me get through it. I'm not saying it's the answer. I just think your mental state of mind at that point is very damaging for yourself, like damaging to yourself, like how your brain's working, how you're sleeping, and all of that is just not helping like your head.
Yeah, everything that you said is true, and there is a big stigma around medication. A lot of people don't want to take it because they're afraid of side effects, which is completely normal. But a lot of other people are afraid of taking it because they feel they are betraying their own body. They're like, no, I'm meant to heal naturally. I'm supposed to heal naturally. Why am
I mean, I'm a personal trainer. I had to go to therapy to take drugs. I couldn't accept. I don't take anything. So it took. And my brother said to me, he's like, if you had cancer, would you decline the treatment? And you know, no, of course I wouldn't. Like, I wouldn't. I would take chemo if, God forbid, I had to. And he was like, why is this different? you're not well. You can work on, you know, the root cause. And it kind of struck a chord with me. And I was like, he's right. You know, right now, at this point in my life, this is what I have to do. And it doesn't mean I'm going to rely on it, but it means that right now, this might be what I have to do. And I actually tried 10 drugs. Like I would have taken heroin if someone told me it was going to fix me. There was a point, honestly, I would have taken anything. And my other question is, if you're that ill, what's scarier, feeling like that or the drug? Because to me, it's what's worse. Like, I don't know. You know, when I was younger and I had these episodes, I always say to people, it was different. They were episodes. They weren't happening every day. You know, so no, of course I didn't want to take drugs back then. No way. Because it was livable with, to an extent. What I had this time was not what I would call livable. It was debilitating. So, you know, I tried a lot of drugs. A lot of the side effects were horrible. But I'm actually quite glad. I think it actually helps me give people a perspective on it, because I'm still on a drug now. Although I want to wean off of the drug, I think the drug really helped me, and it actually had no side effects. But did it have no side effects because my brain had already started to calm down? I do question that. I think every drug I was taking at the first year, my brain was like, whoa. And I think I've read there's a doctor that said if your brain reacts, it's a good thing, because apparently it means that there's more chance it's going to work. I don't know how true that is, but a few neurologists did say that to me. And then I had a neurologist that said, I've never had anyone not be cured and you're not being fixed. And I'm like, well, that's helpful. So I think you got to be careful with doctors, though, because I think, you know, I always hear people go to doctors and they're so unhelpful. Like, I don't know how it is where you are, but there are some really shitty doctors.
Yeah.
You know, they're not compassionate because you're not going to die from it. They don't actually like take the time to really help you, you know. And I speak to people now, and I'm forever trying to, you know, if I can, recommend them to a good doctor, because that is, you know, one of the biggest factors is having a doctor that listens to you, or even finding anyone on the internet that listens to you, because it's, you know, I mean, trying to tell my best friend, hey, like, dude, I can't see, like, I can't walk, I don't feel like I'm physically in my body right now. That is a bizarre thing to say to someone, and they're not going to relate to it, because it's just, what could you compare that to?
Yes, you're right. And speaking of finding help in the internet, so as I mentioned earlier, you were one of the first videos that I saw that helped me see that, okay, there is hope. But what about you? When you started feeling like this, and there weren't many videos online, what, like, who were those people that you went to? Who were those people that, how do you find them in order to gain that confidence that, okay, shit, like, I'm gonna get better. This is gonna go away. Like, how do you find people when your video was one of the first?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's so weird, right? Because I've connected with so many people, like, and what's crazy is when I like started talking about this on Instagram, met a lot of people in my own circle that had this condition. And I don't believe that it's rare. I don't. There's no way. I've got like 4 clients that have vestibular migraines, you know, not to the extent that I had it, but, you know, I could diagnose someone better than a GP could. I know every single symptom of it. Like, you start telling me your family history and I'm like, okay, like, I can 99.9% say this is probably migraine related. And yeah, they didn't have it like to the extent, but they'd get vertigo once a month and they wouldn't think anything of it. And they'd get headaches every now and then. And I'm like, it's the same thing. It's just not an extreme version of it. Okay. So, you know, it's like, it's not. There's a lot of people out there that get vertigo and get headaches all in correspondence, but it's not debilitating. So they're not going to a doctor. And this is what I say to people, when you actually start talking about it, everyone's like, oh, wait a minute. And that's what's been quite good about this. So what I realized is I found Sean's video on the internet. And me and Sean actually have met. We went for coffee, I think a year after I had this. And there was no other videos. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like, I'd never, ever thought I'd be the sort of person that would be like researching stuff online. Like, there was a point where I couldn't get out of a support group. I just lived in the support group because no one else in my world understood what I was going through. I mean, my time was amazing. And he was like, you need to come out of this group. Like, because it's all I could think about. It's very, very much over, like, it's your whole day. It's like consumes you. And yeah, there weren't a lot of videos. And also I was like, what happened to those people? I think Sean was the only one that documented every part of it. She didn't just make one video. She like, oh, this is what happened this time. So I was like, I promised myself, I was like, as much as I don't want to be, I didn't even think anyone would look at the video. I don't even think I thought, you know, when I look at how many people have viewed this video, I'm like, oh my God, like what? I've made fitness videos that have like, don't even get that much attention. But I promised myself, I'm a big believer in God and karma. And I was like, God, like, if I get better from this, like, I swear to God, like, if you just let me improve, like, I will make a video. And I swear, like, my promise is to help as many people that, you know, I can, you know, within reason. I think a lot of people, when they get better, they don't want to talk about it. And I get that, which is why for me on my YouTube, I can't reply to the comments because it's still quite hard to revisit that place. Like, it's very traumatizing. But there's also just too many messages. But anyone that, you know, message on Instagram, I will for sure get back to you. Like, it's a much easier platform for me to actually reply to people. But that's why I continued to make the videos like, hey, this is how I felt after a year, and this is how I felt after 2 years. And now there's so many videos out there. It's like, oh, this is amazing. Like, thank God, all these people, like, you know, I think Matt was like, I saw your video, so I wanted to make a video. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is going to help so many people. Like, I wish more people made videos. I would like check YouTube every month to see if someone else had posted something.
Yeah.
And now there's like doctors that do videos. I'm like, this is, you know, this is great. Like, and eventually I am hoping to do a physio degree to do balance. So to basically do, so like, you know how you go to balance physicians to like balance rehab, like,
Yep.
Like, eventually do that at some point, because I think there needs to be more doctors that actually have an awareness of what this is and how it feels. And I think that's really, you need to relate to the people that you're seeing. You know, it's I have met some really nice doctors though. I have also met very good therapists that, although, you know, she didn't know, you know, I'm sure she didn't know anything about vestibular migraines, but she believed me. She never ever thought I was lying. Whereas other therapists that I had tried before her were like, oh, you know, you're just stressed out and you're anxious. I'm like, yeah, of course I am.
Yeah, no kidding.
My whole life's over. What are you talking? I can't, like, what do you mean? Like, yes, I'm anxious, but that's not what this is. Like, this is actually a real thing. And I do feel like a lot of people, they get written off because it mimics anxiety, but then anything can mimic anxiety, anything that's invisible. You know, I lost friends over this because they didn't get it. And I was like, you know what, you're not a good friend. Like, you should be able to understand, like, you don't need to know what I'm going through to be a good friend. And then equally, there were people that were amazing in my life who now I like have so much love them. Like, my ex-boyfriend was the biggest help for me. Like, I would not have got through those years like without him. There's just no way. Like, I wasn't myself. Like, I was a shell of myself. Like, every day I was, just crying like continuously. And I don't think he'd ever seen me cry. We've been friends for like 9 years. You know, I say to them, I've gone through death and I've lost parents, and this was worse. And they're like, how? And they're like, how? I'm like, it was worse because it disables you. And I can say that because I've gone through really bad stuff, and I'm like, this was worse. Like, I would rather relive death. Like, this was worse because you can't do anything. Like, and especially if you're someone like me who's really active, all of a sudden my body was like, you can't do this. Like, you can't go out. You can't get in your car and drive. You won't even see the road to drive. Like, I couldn't even see the lights. And it's like, how do you deal with that? And I think the scariest part is deep down after 2 months, I was like, because of how ill I was like, as a logical person, you're like, okay, if this isn't going to kill me and it's not a brain tumor, if it's this bad, it's probably not going to disappear overnight. And that is the hardest thing to tell someone that suffers with this. Like, when I get people reach out, I get scared to tell them how long it might take them, because I think I would have been petrified if someone said to me, hey, by the way, in a year's time, you still might have symptoms. But I think the biggest thing to take from this is, as long as you're making progress, you shouldn't care, because there's nothing damaged. There's nothing wrong. Like, there's something wrong with your brain, but it's not broken. And if someone can recover from brain tumors and car accidents and concussions, you are going to recover. it just might not be in the time frame that you want it to be on.
Yes, Amy, and people, it's hard because there needs to be realistic expectations. A lot of people that I talk to, they ask me, they're like, what's the cure? How long until I get cured? And I said, okay, let's back up. Let's not talk about the cure, but let's talk about getting better, because I cannot guarantee you that there's going to be a cure where one day you wake up and you're completely like you used to be. I mean, great. If that happens, awesome. That would be that dream. But you will eventually get better to the point that you'll drive again. You'll be able to go out again to do your grocery shopping, to live life to a certain level, just controlling your triggers. And they're like, no, but people online are living like they got the cure. I'm like, okay, the life that you see online, it's one thing, but the reality, it's behind it. You need to understand that there is getting better and there's a cure.
People are a bit naive, because when I look back, like, it's really weird. And maybe this is because I did have this from a young age. I'm like, I always had these triggers. Like, you know, I remember all the times I would feel really spaced out. I was always in a train station. I was always in a shopping mall. I was always in a place full of triggers, lights, noise. And I never, ever realized this. And then all of a sudden it was like I was figuring out all this stuff in my life. Like, oh my God, like this has been there the whole time. Yeah. So it's actually like, you know, this isn't, and yes, I do, like, cool, if you never had anything and then all of a sudden you woke up, fine, you're lucky, it started a bit later for you. But I kind of am a big believer in there is always someone worse off, and this isn't going to kill you. Like, and I know that's like, when someone said that to me when I first got this, I wanted to punch them in the face, because there's yes, people that can go about their day and they feel normal. I don't feel normal. Like, I don't. So I get, but what I'm saying is you are eventually going to get more normal than someone that's got that. And that's my point. Like, you're not going to die, and you're not going to stay as bad as you are. That, I think, is the biggest thing that I say to people. I'm like, and also, I think a lot of people over dramatize things. Like, there's a lot of people that I've met online where they might just be more anxious than the average person. Everyone's tolerance to things is different. So, you know, me when I was younger, I could deal with like feeling off balance, like here and there, because I was used to it. Feeling a bit off balance for me, I was like, cool. I could deal with that all day long. Feeling spaced out, no, not so much. But there's people that will feel a bit of balance and they're like, I'm dying. And then other people are like, whoa, what? And it's like, but you don't know that person's threshold. So you can't always take what someone is saying, because you don't really know how bad they are. Like, or does that make sense? Like, it's not a bad thing. I just would speak to people and they'd be like, I'm so bad. And then like months later, they'd be recovered and I wasn't. And it would really upset me, because I would feel so hopeless. I'm like, and my boyfriend was like, dude, you don't know how bad they were. He was like, you don't know how bad they were. Like, you're just going by what they're saying. Like, I get the flu and I'm like dying. Like, how do you know how bad they were? Yeah. So he was like, no, they could have been like you when you were younger, where, you know, like it was episodic, and like, and this is really important to say that to people. You don't know. Like, my client had this and I was like, you're not going to be like me. She was like, what was if it ends? I'm like, you can't think like that. Like, don't think like that. Like, you don't know how bad it's going to be. Like, you can't, you know, it's like me thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go back to square one. You can't live your life like that. I think the biggest thing is to, yes, be realistic with it. You can't cure epilepsy, but you can control it. You can't cure migraine, but you can control. That's not a cure though. And I think people take that very literally, because but I think there's a time and a place to say it to someone. Like, I've met people, I'm like, I'm not even going to tell this person the time frame. They're too anxious. They don't need to hear that right now. They just need to focus on what they need to do. And I think, you know, that's why when I hear people going to certain doctors, even doctors that I've been to, I get angry, because I'm like, just don't be a doctor. Like, what are you doing? Like, if you don't want to help someone. And it does really upset me that, you know, my uncle's a doctor with kids. And I said to him, I was like, I don't have any faith in doctors. This has ruined my faith in doctors. And he was like, it's not true. There are some amazing doctors out there. But unfortunately for you and other people, when they get something wrong with them, you are unfortunate to run into not so good doctors with whatever illness you have.
Very true. Yeah.
But I don't think that's very nice, you know. So I think the biggest thing I would say to someone is go see a therapist, go talk to someone if you are very anxious, and to calm yourself down, rather than kind of like, you know, I think the biggest thing for me was having someone to vent to every week.
Yeah.
Like, how's your week? How are you doing life? Like, support groups can be a bit hit and miss, because there are always some people in support groups that are going to scare the living crap out of you, and they'll be like, I've been like this for 30 years and this is what I'm that are like, and then you'll go on their profile and they're like on holiday, and it's like, well, how bad have you been for 30 years? Like, so it's like, I do say to people, like, be careful with support groups, because I got into that, and it would honestly, it would petrify me, like it would actually suffocate me with anxiety. And it's like, you know, and my sister-in-law said to me, dude, I go on support groups, you know, for, you know, after she had my niece and nephew, and she's like, you should hear what they say in those support groups, and that's not even something where they're like dying. They're just talking about like mastitis. And so she was like, you know, in whatever it is, like, you're always going to get some crazy people in support groups. But I always say to people, just watch that. Like, maybe it's better to go to a therapist than vent in a support group, because it's hit and miss. Obviously, I met some great people, but it's hit and miss.
Yeah, no, you're right. And speaking of support and emotional support, especially, I see, what's her name? Nala behind you?
Yeah.
So
she's literally right next to me.
So how has it been having a pet? I mean, I have 4 dogs. Okay, hey, when before this started, I love my dogs. My dogs were my whole life, and I lived day in, day out to be with them and spend time with them and take them for walks. When this happened and the depersonalization hit, I felt completely disconnected from them. I felt like I didn't want to pet them. I didn't want to see them. I didn't want to be around them. Now that I overcame that depersonalization, I'm back to loving my dogs and playing with them and spending time with them. How is it for you having Nala? Like, do you feel more reassurance with her?
Yeah, so it's a bit weird. I got Nala when I was a lot better. So it's you know, she's only a year old. So I feel like for me, like, one thing that really bothered me with this, I was like, I'm never going to be able to look after a dog. I'm never going to be able to have a kid. Like, how am I going to deal with this? Like, you know, when I got Nala, my ex-boyfriend bought her for me, and you know, it was really weird, because the biggest trigger for me was being outside. I don't know, like, go figure, like, everyone's different. And I've realized now it's just the movement and the patterns of everything. My brain doesn't quite sync it. I also think I'm quite weird in the fact that I didn't take any time off work. I literally put myself through work the whole time. Now, some people be like, how? I'm like, dude, I was violently ill. I'd work and be in bed. But the depression was so overwhelming. I was like, if I stay in bed all day, like, I don't think I'd mentally be able to cope. And I'm lucky in the sense that I had a job where it was my hours. I could pick how many people I saw. I mean, working at one point was like, there was a thick piece of glass between me and the person that I was looking at. Like, it was just unbearable. And so walking outside, I was like, how am I going to get a dog? Like, walking outside for me for a very long time was the most uncomfortable thing in life. Like, it felt like I was on acid walking outside, not like taking acid, but, and it's weird because I remember when I was a kid, it was very similar. I have one memory of my mum having, and this was quite reassuring for me, because I was like, did I have this when I was younger? Like, maybe this is different. And I remember having an episode of these migraines, and I didn't want to go outside. And my mum was like, get out of bed. Like, I don't think she really realized what was wrong with me. Like, my mum was quite tough. She was like, get out of bed. Like, we're going to walk the dog. We had a Labrador. I was like, no, I can't. Like, I almost felt like, my God, like, she really didn't understand what I was feeling. But I remember I didn't want to walk outside. I was crying. So I think it must have been the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, it had to have been, there's like, come on, that's a big coincidence. And to me, I was like, okay, I had this once and this went away. I need to, like, be calm, and I need to try and get over this. So when I got Nala, I was like, I can't, oh my God, I'm gonna have to walk her outside by myself. And this was like the biggest trigger for me. And it was weird. Like, I cried about it. Like, I wish that I could have been more back to myself. But I did. I started walking her every day outside, and this to me was like the biggest achievement, which is weird because I could exercise way more before I could walk outside. And this is what I say to people, like, we're all so different. Like, I can exercise, you can't, but you can walk outside and you feel normal, but I don't. So it's, you just couldn't pick why some people feel better doing certain things. You know, all the time, Amy, you work out. Like, I don't understand. It's like, hey, you can do things that I can't do. I don't know. Like, certain things feel worse for certain people. So you just can't pinpoint it. So Nala, like, forced me to get over that because I could not walk her. But it petrified me. And I'd say, even now, and I think this is because of my job, because my job is so active, I'd say feeling spacey is the one symptom that lingers a little bit. It's not like terrible and I can walk outside and not be like freaked out by it, but I wouldn't say it's like back to normal. But I think that is probably because I have like never let my system rest. Whereas when I went away and I wasn't working, it was a hell of a lot less. So I do think, you know, how many people with vestibular migraines do you meet that are trainers, that are girls?
So
like
many.
It's probably quite rare. And I do remember my neurologist saying to me, like, you are quite elite in the sense that you're doing something every day that really probably isn't good for you. Like, I was like, I'm not going to stop exercising. I can't. That's my life. That's my job. Like, I don't care. Like, so I think for me, that symptom has probably lingered more because I'm so active, which sounds weird. So running outside is still not something that I've yet achieved. It's probably I could walk outside and not feel 100% normal. But again, some days it feels worse than others, but it's not, I can do it. Like, I'm not, like, I don't feel scared to do it. And I think it's important to say that to people because they're like, oh my God, like, you still have a symptom. It's like, a lot of people still have some residue symptoms that haven't quite gone away. But what I would say is I think that symptom in particular probably takes the longest to go because I think a lot of doctors have said this to me, that it's something to do with your brain signals firing. How true this is, I don't know, because they don't really know. You know, no doctor really knows about the human brain. So when people get answers, it's like they don't know. They don't even know how the brain works. Like, you need to know that about doctors. So how true this is. But she basically said, it's just a symptom of your balance signals not connecting with your eyes, ears, and brain. So something's still a bit off. And that is what triggers this symptom. It's not even fight or flight. It literally is, you know, your signals not actually being balanced. Like, so you just feel a bit like when you're drunk. That kind of like, oh, I feel a bit out of it. It kind of makes sense when you think about it like that, right? So, but you know, again, even for me, some days I'm like, but wait a minute. There was a day where I couldn't walk outside. So if I've gone from not being able to walk outside like it's the worst thing in the world for me and I would cry, and now I can walk my dog and I don't even bat an eyelid, if that's my progression, then I don't see a reason why in the next however long it will completely go away. It doesn't mean that I won't have days where that doesn't come back, because that's unrealistic. And I think this is people's thing of cured. It's like, cool, like, you're not, why does it matter? I held on to that for so long. I want to go back to normal. I want to go back to normal. I want to go back to my life before. I don't want to think about being careful. I don't want to think about triggers. Like, I was so angry. Like, I was like, it's not fair. And my brother was like, you were never normal. You had this. You might have felt like you weren't, but like, you kind of were never normal. Yeah. And he's like, normal. He was like, you know, there's people that get all sorts of things wrong with them. And as you get older, especially, like, I'm 32, like, as you get older, like, loads of weird things start happening to you. And it's like, I think there's a lot of people in the world that don't have the luxury of taking the piss out of their body. You know, they don't. And I think that's what I was angry at. But it's like, you know what? It's all how you see your life. There are worse things that you could be dealing with.
True.
Have to, you listen, you have a choice. I always remember when I was lying in bed, I was like, if I can get to the day that I can walk my dog and I can, yeah, cool, like, I still have some symptoms, but I'm still living a life, I'm not going to moan about that, because there were days that I prayed for that and I never thought it would happen. And I think you have to remind yourself of that. It's so important. So important.
It is. You're right. And you keep speaking a lot about your family and about how they knew this was happening since you were a child. Have any of them, besides migraines, experienced anything kind of somewhat similar, or you're the first one in your family that experienced the dizziness? And
my brother, like my middle brother, because he was like, would you have a headache? And I actually used to get headaches when I was a kid. I remember having headaches really badly across my eyes, to the point where I thought I went to get an MRI scan. So I know that I have had headaches. I can't say it wasn't my main symptom though. That wasn't, I think that's what I said to my doctor. I was like, yes, I have had headaches, but that wasn't the bothering symptom. The symptom was the dizziness. My brother, one of them, gets the same feeling that I do in terms of the pressure, because I said to him, I was like, I can't look down. It feels like you're doing a headstand. So if you do a headstand and you feel that like blood to your head, that's exactly how my head felt. And even now, if I look down for too long, I can still kind of feel it a little bit. But I said to him, I was like, he's like, yeah, that's how my migraines feel. And I'm like, that's a migraine. This is how stupid I was. I was like, what do you mean that's a migraine? A migraine is where you feel sick and like your head like is in so much pain, and
Throbbing, yeah.
it's, you know what I mean? It's such a weird, like, so he has that. My sister has had auras, so she gets visual things, which I've had, but that's all she gets. She doesn't even get it. She gets tingling, numbness, aura, and nothing else. Like, honestly, it's like the spectrum for this is so crazy.
It is, yeah. So, yeah.
And my oldest brother has had vertigo with his migraines, but not in the same way. He's had like a day of it.
Yeah. But still,
So,
it sucks.
you know,
I don't wish that on anybody, Amy. It's.
I just always say to people, I'm like, why couldn't I get the normal version? I like always, I'm like, so not fair. Like, why couldn't? And then it's funny because actually, like, I remember thinking, if I had painful migraines every day, I think that's just as bad. There was a point where I was like, oh no, that'd be easier, but I don't think it is. I think I met someone that woke up every day with a pain of like 9 throwing up, like with migraines, and I'm like, that's not any better than vertigo. That's just as bad.
Yeah. Amy, you mentioned that you believe in God, and you talk about God a couple of times. I believe in God as well. I'm not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person.
Yeah, I'm very.
I pray every day. I talk to God, but I don't define myself as Christian or Catholic or anything like that. I have quite an open mind about it. How was this? Has this shaken or strengthened your faith? Thinking like, why me type of thing, or maybe I'm strong enough to handle this, or why is this happening to me? Like, how does this change your faith?
I mean, I think my relationship with God changed when my mum passed away. I think after that, I was like, it erased a lot of my faith in like prayer. So I used to pray quite a lot, and it's quite weird because my ex-boyfriend is very, very Christian and he prays every day, and he really believes, like, and I love that about him. Like, you know, especially when I was going through this, he was like every day, like he would pray for me and he'd be like, you know, God's gonna get you. And I couldn't quite accept that. I was like, I kind of lost that quite a while ago. I don't think why me, because I've been brought up to always believe there's someone worse off than me and that you have to be grateful for things. I think the first year of this, that was really, really difficult. I would cry and scream like into my pillow. Like, I really have tried to block it out, but I do remember feeling that low. But I think maybe my path is that I could help people. Who knows? Like, it depends how you want to see it. I'm very spiritual. I believe more in the universe than God, if that makes sense. Like, I believe the universe does things, and I think if I can leave this earth helping someone and leaving some sort of a print, even in my job, I get to help people. I wanted to do something where I could help someone, even if that's as minuscule as I'm making someone feel better about themselves and they're healthier. So even with this, I'm like, I did think, why me? But then I was like, what good is that going to do me? Like, nothing. Yeah. Because I know people. The thing with me is I started seeing a lot of people that were younger than me have worse things like cancer, and they were my age. And then that just snapped me out of it. I was like, I bet they wish they had what I had. And I guess that's just how my mind works, though. And you know, my twin brother's very different to me. He doesn't really think like that. But I was brought up in a family that was like, there is always someone worse off than you. Like, to be a bit more like, because otherwise you just pity yourself. And I don't think that helps you. But it's very much your character as a person.
Yep.
So my character as a person is, you know what? There's someone worse off. So I'm just going to deal with this. But yeah, like, I have my days where I'm like, oh my God, like, I've been through so much. I'm so young. Like, it's not fair. And then I'm like, well, I'm Jewish. Like, my ancestors, like, they got their whole families wiped out. Like, and it sounds really dramatic, but they did. Like, and they lived happy lives. And I think maybe that's why Jews are quite tough, because we've all been brought up to just get on with stuff. I said this to my friend. I was like, dude, like, they were stronger than we were because we've been spoiled. Yeah. I actually think they got on with things more than we did because they weren't allowed to like pity themselves. You know, like they had to just like
talk it up.
It's a weird way to look at it, right? But it's like, this is how I've looked at life, and this is kind of my outlook, and I'm glad that I think like this, because if you don't think like that, I think you're going to have a much more unhappy life with whatever happens to you. Bad stuff happens to people all the time. Unfortunately, it tends to always be really good people, but one of my best friends is very spiritual, and he's like, your soul always repeats if you haven't done your job in this life. This is his analogy. I'm like, are you joking? I was like, I better learn this time because I'm not going through this again.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I was like, I can't keep doing this. And he's like, you don't know what your spirit's gone through. Like, but it will, and I'm like, I like kind of trust his opinion. Like, he's a very spiritual guy. And I'm just like, okay, like there's a higher power. So I'm just going to do the best that I can with whatever cards I'm given. As hard as that, is.
Yeah, it's interesting because I saw this lady. I don't want to get off topic, but I saw this lady a couple of weeks ago. She does Reiki. I don't know if you heard about Reiki.
Oh, yeah, like energy healing and stuff.
Energy, yes. And then she's like, the universe is giving you this because you're meant to learn from this and evolve and evolve different senses. So you get visual auras because you rely on your eyes so much, but you're gonna go through a cycle where you're evolving through different things. And if you don't finish that cycle this life, you will repeat it next life, and then you'll repeat the cycle. So it's similar to what you're saying.
It's crazy. You actually believe, like my friend that I lived with over lockdown, she gave me this card. She was doing a reading on me. The card came up with an eye here, and she said that's because you use your eyes, and that's probably why. And I was like, oh my god, this is way too weird. Like, this is mad. But because I never had auras as a kid. I know that much. I would remember that. I had visual snow because I remember things looking quite grainy. I remember seeing static a lot as a kid, but I know that I never had an aura. That was definitely a new one for me. And my aura is so weird because my aura looks like heat haze. So my aura to me looks like what you see when you look through a fire, where it just like goes like that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my god, like sometimes I'm like, is it that? Is it real? Is it not? And sometimes it's real, like it's actually like, heat in the distance. I'm like, this is like, how am I even meant to tell? Like, I said that to my friend. I was like, dude, can you see that? And she was like, yeah, I can see that. I was like, oh my god, like I can't even get an aura that, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's mad. But I think that I do believe that. I do. And I think since having my migraines, I'm so much more spiritually in tune. It's crazy. Like, I feel things now that senses, and whether you believe in that or not, like, I've had so many encounters since having this and since having to dig deeper into myself that, like, I don't even remember the person I was. Honestly, like, I could not tell you the person that I was before this happened. Like, I can't remember that person. I don't even think the same. And maybe what it was meant. And you know what's funny? My ex-boyfriend always said that to me. Whenever I'd cry, I'm like, I can't do this. I was like suicidal. I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I can't keep living this cycle. Like, it just kept going on and on. And I think what is really important is to remember that your progress, you will not. It's so slow that it's not like days, weeks. It's like months. Yeah. So I think that's pretty difficult because you think you're making no progress. And actually you look back and, like, even like now I'm like, I still haven't, like, this spacey feeling is just as bad as it was. And then I'm like, wait a minute, like last year I would never have got on a plane and gone away with my friends, and now I did. And I'm like, there's no way, like, but it's just how long it's taken, because unfortunately the brain is a very slow healer. That I definitely agree with. Neuroplasticity happens. It definitely takes time for your brain to chill out. And it depends what you're doing in the meantime to let it chill out. Like, because I think that's what I mean about certain pills helping people to calm the hell down if they can't calm down by themselves at a certain point. But yeah, I definitely think that I'm very in tune with a lot more. My body completely. And obviously my job is to be a trainer. So I was already in tune.
Now, things that can help people improve are your mindset, of course, getting out of feeling pity for your own self, but feeling that this is going to get better. Exercising, like you do quite a lot of exercising. So I wouldn't say as much as you do, but yes, exercising and movement is good. What else do you think? Like, does diet help you, or has it had any effect?
Because I kept a diary of my symptoms for a solid 2 years. In this diary, I'm quite OCD, so I'm very good at doing these kind of things. And eventually, like, what happened is I got better. The days became so consistent. I would, like, consistently be 60% better that I stopped writing in the diary because it stopped doing this and kind of leveled off. I went to see a spiritualist who was very good. I mean, listen, like I said, the first thing she said to me when I walked through the door was, something's wrong with your head. After that, I was like, the woman did not know me. I was like, what is? And I remember saying to her, am I going to get better? Am I going to get better? She was like, you're going to be able to live your life again. The comment bothered me so much, but it makes sense because my friend was like, if you have epilepsy, you're never cured, but you live a life. She was like, have you ever thought that's what she means? You can't be cured of migraine if you have it. So she was like, start taking what she said. But it really bothered me because I was so ill at the time. I just couldn't handle, and I get why, but you just can't handle someone saying that because all you want is someone like, you're gonna get better. Like, and in your head, you're like, I want to be completely better. And that means gone. But it's like, what I think someone says, you're going to have days where you feel normal. Maybe that's a better way to put it to someone. Doesn't mean it's cured. So I always try and explain it differently. But she said that foods triggered me, but they weren't the cause. And I would agree with her, but it's difficult because it all depends what I did. So, for example, when I wasn't working and I was traveling for like weeks, I could eat loads of dairy. Nothing would really happen to me. If I then go back and I start doing these other triggers and then I add that in, all of a sudden it bothers me. So, and that took a really long time to figure out. It's not that it's not a trigger, it's the jug theory. Like, what are you putting in your jug? And that I think is like, so now I know that if I have like not slept all week, I'm not going to go out all night on a Saturday night. I can't. I know I'm going to feel really shit the next day. And I know that I might get a migraine and I might feel, and that's what this is meant. That's what I think I used to get annoyed about because I would burn the candle at both ends. I would always take the piss out of my body. And I think what this was meant to teach me is that I can't do that anymore. Like, I have to listen to it. And I never was someone that did that, ever. I pushed my body through all sorts of things. And you know what's weird is I've seen a lot of people in my industry get a lot of things wrong with them. You know, even with health and fitness, I always say to people, it's your mindset and looking after your body is just as health and fitness as the exercise. And it's even changed how I am as a trainer. My whole approach to my clients is different. My whole approach to fitness is different. You know, because for me, I think the biggest thing that triggered off my migraines was doing bodybuilding competitions and screwing my hormones up. You know, I didn't have periods, and coincidentally, a year after that, boom, all this stuff happens. No, I can't go back and change it. And I don't want to go back and change it. You know, there was a time where I was like, I wish this never happened, and I don't wish that anymore. And I never thought I'd say that, but I don't. Like, I'm a better person. I have a better outlook on life, and I appreciate things so much more. And for me in the slightest anymore. Like, I swear someone could hit my car and I'm just like, whatever, it's just a car. Like, it doesn't even like affect me in the same way. Like, because it's just like your health is so important to you that you're like, and I always say to people, hey, how do you know this didn't happen to you to stop you getting something else? How do you know that this didn't completely change how you live your life so that you're not going to get something else later on?
Of course, yeah, you're right. And I agree with you. I used to be quite over dramatic, but now I take things a little bit easier because I know it's not worth it to stress myself over little things anymore. So you're right. Amy, I know you're running a program right now on Instagram for people to join you exercising. Have you ever thought about doing a program for balanced exercises, like just to teach people how to keep it balanced?
Honestly, I would love to. My issue with that is that everyone's so different. Like, what you can do and what, you know, I can do and what everyone's variations of it. So you'd never be able to do it for a whole set of people. And that really bothers me because it would leave certain people feeling really crap. So does that make sense? And honestly, I'll be really honest with that. Vestibular rehab is I got sent to vestibular rehab when I was younger, and I went back to see the same woman who also wasn't very nice. But I said to her, you knew I had this when I was younger and you never explained it to me. Like, I didn't even know what was wrong with me. You know, if you'd have asked me at 25, oh, Amy, do you have migraines? I'd be like, oh, no, but I've got this weird balance inner ear problem that I once got. I didn't even know what was wrong with me. Like, nobody explained it to me. And she was so unhelpful. She was like, you know, stand on one leg and, you know, do the PEM-I thing. And I said to her, I was like, let me ask you a question. Are you to tell me that these exercises are what got me better? Or they just helped me while my body actually healed itself? And she was like, the second one. it's not the cure. It's like, honestly, I passed every balance test. I went to 3 vestibular rehab therapists at the beginning of this. They said I was the fittest person they'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And they were like, there's nothing we can do to help you. And I would leave like crying.
Yeah.
But how are they going to get rid of my derealization? How are they going to get rid of that? That's not my, do you know what I mean? Like, they couldn't. So when people say balance exercise, I'm like, I don't even know if that's what I would call it. I think that you can only do, what I would probably do is make different programs. And that's something that I'm looking into. So creating a program that is for people that maybe can't do head turns and can't look up and down, but then creating a program for people that can. Because to do a class, it's quite hard to, and it bothers me. Like, I've had, I've coached one girl that has very similar symptoms to me. We're very similar, so I could coach her. Like, I knew what her triggers were. But to do a class full of people is difficult, because I always want someone to leave feeling good about themselves.
Yes,
I
of course.
want someone to leave feeling like they couldn't do it, and why could they, other people could, but we've got the same condition. That would really upset me, because I know how much that would bother me. So I think what would be good for me is to definitely do some programs for people that, for some of them that like can't do head turns, some people that can. HIIT training is probably the worst thing that even I can do. I'm a bad example for the vestibular. Like, my doctor categorically told me it's the biggest trigger, and I've been told that because apparently when you do HIIT training, it triggers off some hormone in your body. I don't really remember what she called it. And it only happens when your body's getting overheated, which is probably why during my bodybuilding competitions, I took every trigger. I drank caffeine every day. I did HIIT training every day. When I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, no wonder I got, like, I pretty much did every trigger for a whole year, and then stopped my for like 4 months. And then I'm like, oh yeah, no wonder I was so screwed. I was like, that makes sense. But like, what? My brother actually said to me at the time, he's like, all the stuff that you're doing is really bad for you. And I'm like, no, it's not. And when I got ill, he's like, I told you all the stuff you were doing was really bad. I'm like, you know what? It's not the time to say it to me. It's just not the time, Greg. Like, it's not the time. But I think, I know I went a bit off topic, but yeah, I think food and balance, I think all these things can trigger people. I don't think they're going to cure you if you cut them all out, personally. I think that doctors don't know about migraine a lot, but they know that it goes in cycles. So they know that it can definitely, like, the biggest thing for me when I got ill was hearing someone say you're not going to be stuck forever. I had this fixation on it. I literally paid to see 7 different doctors. There's not even amount of words for how much money I spent that year.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I don't regret it. I really don't. Like, when I actually wrapped up, I was like, I would do it again, because if you're ill, you're going to spend the money. You have the money to spend. Like, you just would, like, whatever. Like, can't go back on that money or whatever. But I paid to see so many doctors, and I would record them as well. So I think I sent Matt a few, like, anyone that reached out, I think it's hard for me, because in these recordings, I'm like quite emotional in quite a lot of them, because I was very ill. But I wanted them to hear what I heard from these doctors. And, both of them were like, one of them, which was called Linda Luxon, who's probably quite a high up doctor that a lot of people speak about. I had this theory in my head. I was like, all right, this woman's like 72, or like she's in her 70s. She must have seen thousands of me. I had researched so many people online that had gone to her years and years and years and years ago. So I was like, if this woman can sit here and say to me that I am going to eventually feel better, then I'm cool. I don't need to see another doctor. And that's exactly, she was very blunt. Like, I don't think she wasn't horrible, but she was very, like, English. Direct. Straight. Yeah, like, she was very, and I was like, am I going to be stuck like this? And she was like, well, of course you would. Of course you're not. Why would you be stuck like this? And I was like almost like I shouldn't have asked the question. She's like, you just need to sort out what's wrong with you. She's like, you need to, like, and then when I started telling her, like, the drugs that I'd taken, she was looking, she's like, well, this one you went on long enough. Why would they give you that drug? This wasn't even the highest dose that you could have taken. And she was like, well, I'm not really surprised that, like, you're still not feeling great. Like, you haven't really done the right approach. Now, whether this is true or not, the point is she was like, I was like, if I take drugs or I don't, would this eventually go away? And she was like, yeah, it might take a lot longer without drugs. But that was what she said. Yeah. Listen, I'm sure there are doctors that are like, oh, it could last forever. I don't know if I believe that. I think the chances of that are very low, because I've spoken to a lot of people, probably more than maybe the same amount as doctors by this point. And I've met loads of people that have had flare-ups for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. They've always gradually come out of it. I'm not saying they did a flare-up again. That's not what I said. But that if you'd like to think if it happened once and you got out of it, that you'll be okay to get out of it again. I think it's the fear of not knowing.
Yes. Amy, what does the future hold for you?
I would like to do the physio stuff. I still get brain fog, so I'm like so bad at exams. But I really want to take something positive out of this. And I think the future for me is just being grateful and trying to help people that reach out to me with this and know that it's not a life sentence. It just might feel like it at the time. And the word cure is very loose. But for me, I think just being grateful and being happy and maybe getting rid of the rest of my spaciness, because that's probably the only symptom. And sometimes my eyes get a bit weird. So like if I look at my screen too much or like, but I take the piss. Like I do a lot. I'm probably the most active, dizzy person there is. So I think Matt said that to me. He's like, maybe if you didn't do all this exercise, you'd probably be a lot more cured. But I'm never going to stop doing that because it makes me happy. So what can I say? But I would like to run outside. Running outside for me is still the only thing, and boats. But I really don't want to get on a boat anytime soon. That is just like, I don't know about you, but
I did it in a kayak and it's no fun. Let me tell you, it's so fun.
Actually, even being in like a rubber ring, like I get really upset when I do things that I used to do and they don't feel the same. Like I went ice skating and it was so uncomfortable. Like I could do it, but like I could feel like, but I think Sean actually part of this, she was roller skating. And I was like, you know what? I just need more time. It's okay. Like, and I think sometimes you just need to be like, all right, I can't do this how I used to, but like I'm on ice skates and I have a balance disorder. So maybe in another few years, like when I'm fully like, I'll be better at it. I've always hated boats though. I must say that like boats always used to make me feel really sick.
Yeah, no joke. Amy, as you know, this channel is called Find Your Chappiness. How do you find your chappiness? How does Amy find her chappiness? Your happiness. Is your happiness. What makes you happy?
My family, my friends, and helping people makes me really happy. I did loads of different jobs before, and I always liked helping people in a weird way. I worked for events charities that dealt with kids that weren't well, and I always loved doing something, even if it wasn't, I'm not a doctor or whatever, like even if it's a small part, even you doing this is helping a lot of people. So in your own way, I think for me, feeling like I'm making a difference in my time on this earth makes me happy.
Good.
As easy as that sounds.
No, it's good. It's good. And how can people find you, Amy?
Definitely Instagram. Definitely if you want to speak to me, and I'll probably always voice note you back. I just cannot sit there writing for like, because it's too hard to explain, right? Like how do you explain that in like so I'll always probably voice note someone back, and just give me a nudge if you don't get a reply, because it's probably not that I've ignored you. My inbox sometimes get a bit full. If you email me, actually I probably always will reply. I have actually had a few people email me. Just don't write on the YouTube video. I find it hard. I can't look at that video, not yet. Like it's still something that I don't know about you, but like it's so hard to like look back. Yeah, like, and I always say to people like, the groups, and people don't revisit it, not because they didn't get better. They just can't revisit that part of their life. They were too depressed. Whereas I promised myself that I wouldn't do that. Like I was adamant that I still help people. Oh, sorry. We were Did it took my there you go. Yeah. I promised myself that I would help people. So yeah, definitely Instagram more than YouTube. The YouTube channel, like there's just so many comments. I don't even think I could go through them now. Like it would actually, like every time I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, like this has got so many views. Like what?
Yeah.
I'm resilient on making another one because I would like to kind of shift all my spaciness. Like just maybe completely, and so I can at least like give more of a, so I think my last video I was 70-80%. I'm kind of still there to an extent, maybe a little bit more. So I'll wait till like I'm I'm trying to come off medication at the moment, so that for me is a big one, just because the medication that I'm on in general is quite a hard medication to come off of. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that if I can come off that medication and I'm still where I am now, then I will know that I won't be scared, because I think I'll know that actually, like, that was my body that did that, not the drug.
Healing. Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. It completely does.
Hopefully that actually happens, and I never want to be on any. I mean, I came off any other drug that I was on. I just hope to God I never have to touch any other medication. But if anyone is watching this, don't be scared to take drugs. They help. Like I can't stress that though, because sometimes they really do help. Like,
Yes, they do. They do.
I have such a stigma about the drug thing. Like I just think sometimes you need drugs, and that's okay, and you can come off of them after. They're not
Just
like
to
a life.
get you over the little hump, to get you over that bump, and then you start getting better on your own.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think I really don't like Dr. Srinther, and I know everyone mentions Dr. S. He's all over stuff, but I honestly, like, I really did not like him as a doctor. But he did say, it's like a plaster for the brain and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, he's probably got a point. That is how he described the drugs. The wound heals from hold on. The plaster is not healing the wound. It's just helping it. It's still healing by itself. That's how you should look at the drugs. That makes more sense.
Good point. And on that note, Amy, I want to thank you. It's been a great chat with you. I've been looking forward to this.
I am so happy we could have this. It's so nice. I feel like I could talk about this all day, and I feel like what you're doing is so great. Like, many more people.
What we're doing, you mean? What we're doing.
But even you taking time, you're like, I think, everyone I meet does it in their own way. Like, Sean's got a support group. I talk about it a lot on my Instagram channel and YouTube and whatever. But it makes me so happy to see people talking about it, and oh my God, I'd love to get famous just so I could actually, like, bring so much media attention. I'm so, what I mean? Like, it's like, I hate when they say, oh, it's like so rare. I'm like, it's not that rare. Like, it's just really underdiagnosed.
Yes.
Really underdiagnosed. But I love seeing people because I think, thank God, like, all these people that are not feeling good have got so much more hope, and that makes me feel really happy. So definitely really good that people don't just get better and go off into the sunlight. Try and give back a little bit.
And hopefully the more that we give back, we don't have to come back in another life to repeat the cycle. We can just move on towards the light.
I really had a life you wouldn't even remember. It's the worst thing about it. My friend was like, I can teach you to remember. I was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, no, you don't want to. No, I agree.
But I definitely do agree with that. I don't need to remember the past life, especially if this was what happened in it. I'm cool to, like, move past it.
Yeah, all right, Amy. Well, say goodbye to Nala for me, and then we'll chat soon.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to see this on YouTube. I'll definitely share it, so let me know when it's up.
All right, bye, Amy.
Bye.